Welcome back to the Talking Hedge. I'm Josh Kincaid, capital markets analyst and host of your Cannabis Business Podcast. Today, we're going to take a look at a report from Hedge. It's a Massachusetts cannabis market, a little high-level overview, kind of give us an idea what Massachusetts might look like eventually. All right, so we're going to take a look at cannabis sales in Massachusetts last year for the first 3 quarters of the year, so January through August of 2020, which actually ranks the lowest compared to the other states shown for this graph. During the pandemic, Massachusetts was not an essential business, one of the only states and regions to do that. So again, this is showing the complete shutdown of all the cannabis stores in Massachusetts, obviously having an impact on total sales. Also important to note that both Oregon and Michigan include medical as well as adult use, but still Massachusetts is lagging behind considering how many people live there, go to school there, lots of universities. You would think that the sales would be higher, but clearly not the case. So breaking this down by month, you can kind of see even the impact of the pandemic and the shutdown that it had on Massachusetts compared to other markets. Prior to the pandemic and the closures, Massachusetts had a comparable sales volume to Nevada, which also was decimated by the lack of tourism. After cannabis stores reopened in Massachusetts in May of 2020, sales haven't even surpassed Nevada. But now it looks like Massachusetts is more comparable to Oregon, which isn't bad. Oregon still has a significant legacy market. Even though you can buy $30, $40 ounces in Oregon, there's still an incredible excess because it was they had so many licenses. 3,500 licenses is just too much production. So obviously there's going to be some out the back door. Massachusetts did start the year in 2020 with slow sales from January to February before entering the pandemic shutdown. But after stores opened in May, the pre-COVID sales levels reached with rapid growth right after that. So in the months of July and August, Massachusetts was seeing a higher number of sales than in months prior, more than likely because people were afraid it was going to get shut down again. So they were hoarding. We saw bulk purchases even in the Northwest where that wasn't even an issue. A lot of people went from grams or eighths all the way to ounces to bulk purchase. Even last year, people weren't combusting. So you were seeing more vape, less pre-rolls. Nevertheless, I think that this kind of chart shows a lot of people were ramping up for just in case they were hedging their bets. So if we compare Massachusetts and Washington for their growth, Washington and Oregon are 2 West Coast markets where cannabis stores remain open. We didn't close. We did have curbside pickup and then still don't have delivery here in Washington. But nevertheless, we could see that Massachusetts swung to the closure and reopening of cannabis, sales increasing significantly after that, people hoarding. By comparison, Washington, Oregon, relatively flat. So people go out, buy what they want, when they want, especially in Oregon. Those numbers are pretty low. The average person buys per visit around $30 to $40 in Washington and Oregon compared to as high as 110 in Illinois. So that's kind of what we see. A lot of people come from across state borderlines, as well as maybe not wanting to go out to the store as often, long lines, so they hoard up. So if you look at category market share by state across different markets, what we can see is that there's some markets that are similar and some that are more unique. If you're looking at just Massachusetts, you can see that the market has the highest share of pre-rolls and the second lowest share of flower after California. Share of concentrates is also the second lowest after Nevada. Washington State loves their pre-rolls, but we only have 11.5% compared to the 15.5%. To my surprise, white women 50 and older were the number one purchasers of pre-rolls. Soccer moms, they don't want bongs or dabs or anything, grab and go, and you're not going to see it. Eventually, that same type of mentality or crowd will probably convert to vaping. They just don't want to invest in the hardware and then, have somebody see that. The stigma would just be too much, too devastating. All right, so again, looking at category over time in Massachusetts, kind of can see some trends. Flower category shares increased from 43 to 45%. pre-closures, and then jumped to 48 to 53% after the store openings. Probably going to increase that trend. People are not going to want stores to close, so they're going to hoard that. Pre-rolls, on the other hand, they lost about 10% between January and August, but vape pens increased their share with an additional 5.6%. So maybe people were going out, they found out the pre-rolls weren't very good, weren't the value wasn't there, or whatever the reason is. They're just trying new things and kind of adding to their arsenal of tools, maybe. So average basket size. Massachusetts, among one of U.S. cannabis markets with the largest average basket size as of August of 2020 at $96. I mentioned Illinois had about 110. So that's about 3 times larger than Washington, with our average basket at 32. And again, that's because we buy what we want when we want it. It's just so convenient. There's so many stores in Seattle, that is. King County in Seattle is huge. Portland, also very large, and a lot of convenience there. But once you get outside of that, there's maybe only one store per town in a rural area. So we're very lucky here in the city to have so many stores to go to and visit. On 420, I visited 20 stores. I went to 3 different areas, and it was really interesting to see the different areas and how long it took me to get from store to store. In Seattle, it's less than 3 minutes. In other areas, it could be 7 to 10 minutes per store. So that's actually a farther distance if you think about how much farther it is to get to these stores. So that's probably why people in Illinois are bulking up. They don't want to stand in line, especially if they're coming across the border. All of that. So Massachusetts, all in all, seems to have the smallest market, surprisingly. When taking a closer look, though, it's apparent that the pandemic shutdown and closures in Massachusetts had a significant impact on cannabis sales overall. When we compare to other states, Massachusetts had the most month-over-month growth rate after the stores reopen, which makes sense. Kind of want to buy and hoard and store and make sure that never happens again. So it's going to be interesting to continue and monitor cannabis sales in Massachusetts to see if and when trends start to stabilize. Just going to have to come back to the Talking Hedge and find out. So with that, we're going to roll this one up. I'm Josh Kincaid. This is the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, or don't. And I'm out. Don't forget to smash that like button on your way out and check out these other videos that we've got.